Module, we're going to discuss basics of alternative dispute resolution. So, whoever has taken this course may have some idea about alternative dispute resolution. Of course, for law student, everyone might be having some idea, but for the basic understanding, we'll still go through that the introduction. That is what alternative dispute is and what are the types and what are the legal framework that it relates to. So, alternative dispute resolution involves resolving disputes outside traditional court system with the assistance of natural neutral third parties. ADR methods such as arbitration, mediation, and conciliation provide structure framework for parties to reach mutually agreeable solutions. ADR is known for being faster, less expensive, and more flexible than traditional litigation. Why people choose ADR mostly? It's because it's cost effective and time efficient. It encourages flexibility and adaptability in dispute resolution. What was the basis of the ADR? It was very simple when it was introduced. It's majorly because not everyone was reaching and taking the court proceeding. Not everyone, like, it's a basic mentality people have in India that they don't want to get indulged in court proceedings and things because it's mostly delays the things and it's not for everyone, it's affordable. So basic basis of alternative dispute was that everyone is equal before law and everyone has that right to uh, to initiate with the court proceedings or to execute their right. And Article 21 also gives right to life and personal liberty since everyone cannot proceed with the court proceeding due to uh, the financial circumstances. So we have also Article 39A DPS under given under DPSP that everyone has the right to free legal aid. So what are the types of ADR mechanism? So first is arbitration, second is mediation, conciliation, negotiation, and judicial settlements. So arbitration, what is arbitration? Uh, the basic understanding for this is dispute resolved by an impartial arbitrator whose decision is binding, governed by Arbitration and Conciliation Act 1996. The types of arbitration are ad hoc arbitration and institutional arbitration. Under ad hoc arbitration, parties organize and manage proceedings themselves. Under institutional arbitration, administered by organizations like the Indian Council of Arbitration or International Chamber of Commerce. In mediation, what happens? There's a neutral third party which facilitate negotiation between disputing parties to reach a voluntary settlement. It is non-binding. Conciliation, it's actively under conciliation, it's actively assists party in reaching a settlement. It's governed under Part 3 of Arbitration and Conciliation Act. If we talk about negotiation, it's an informal discussion between party to resolve dispute without third party involvement. And there's a judicial settlements. Example, if we talk about Lok Adalats, it's court-directed settlement. We'll understand better about alternative dispute resolution through some judgment. First is Bhatia International versus Bulk Trading. It's a judgment of 2002, and it has a issue. The issue under this judgment was applicability of Part 1 of Arbitration and Conciliation Act 1996 to international arbitration. So, court held that the Part 1 applies unless expressively excluded by the parties. So, we'll go through this judgment in a brief. The facts were like the parties enter into a contract containing an arbitration clause specifying that arbitration would be governed by the ICC rules, with the seat of arbitration in Paris, France. The issue arose when the first respondent sought interim relief under Section 9 of Arbitration and Conciliation Act 1996 in the courts of Indore. The appellant contended that Part 1 of the Act, including Section 9, was not applicable to arbitration held outside India. So, the key legal question was here, does Part 1 of the Arbitration and Conciliation Act 1996 apply to international commercial arbitration conducted outside India? So, the Supreme Court observed in this that the important legal provision that were observed in this judgment was that Section 2, Subclause 2 says that Part 1 shall apply where the place of arbitration is in India. So the key debate was whether this should be interpreted restrictively, limited to arbitration in India only, or expansively, also covering arbitration outside India unless excluded. And the section 9 of this act talks about provision for interim relief from Indian courts. So its applicability was dependent on whether Part 1 extended to foreign seated arbitration. And if we talk about sections 2, subclause 4 and section 2, subclause 5 of arbitration acts, they were the general provisions making Part 1 applicable unless excluded. So, but this case was overruled by Balco versus Kaser Aluminium, which of 2012 case. So we'll discuss about this case as well. So the issue was applicability, the same issue, the applicability of Part 1 to arbitration in foreign seat post 2012. So it was held under this Part 1 does not apply to arbitration seated outside India. So it overruled the case of Bharti International. So before the case in Bharti International versus Bulk Trading and Venture Global versus Satyam Computer 2008, the Supreme Court held that Part 1 of the Arbitration and Conciliation Act 1996 applied even to arbitrations conducted outside India, unless the party explicitly excluded its provisions. This created a confusion between Indian courts started interfering in international arbitration, where India was not the seat of arbitration. The issue became significant because the act was meant to follow the unilateral model laws, which differentiate between domestic arbitration, that is part 1, and international arbitration, that is part 2. So, Balco's cases aim to clarify this position and provide certainty to arbitration law in India. Um, so, in detail, if we discuss about the arbitration clause was to be governed by English arbitration law, and the seat of arbitration was in London under this case of Balco. So, but the governing law for the contract was Indian law. Dispute here arises that arbitration was conducted in England and two awards were passed. Balco attempted to challenge the award in India under Section 34 of the Arbitration Acts. 34 is talks about setting aside of award. So another issue was here that in a connected case, Bharti Shipyard versus Ferrostal AG, parties disagreed on whether Indian courts could grant interim relief under Section 9 when the arbitration seat was outside India. Proceedings Under the proceedings of Balco case, it was claimed that Balco's challenge was rejected by District Court and the Chhattisgarh High Court. It was then appealed to Supreme Court, leading to a reference to five just Constitution bench to revisit the doctrine set in Bhartiya International. So the key legal observation was, does Part 1 of the Arbitration Act 1996 apply to arbitration seated outside India? Can Indian court grant interim relief under Section 9 when the arbitration seated outside India? What is the distinction between the seat and the venue of arbitration? So we'll discuss under this case about this. The judgment and observation. Overruling of Bhartiya International, uh, the court overruled it. So if the seat of arbitration is outside India, Part 1 does not apply even if the governing law of the contract is Indian law. So in this case also distincted between seat and venue. So the arbitration clause specifically talks about seat, but you will not find the term venue in anywhere in the Arbitration Act. So this case differentiated the meaning of seat and venue. So seat is basically determines the supervisory jurisdiction. That is procedural law of arbitration. It's if it in the arbitration clause, if it is written that the seat will be Indian, so the laws of India will be applied. Whereas if we talk about venue, it basically refers to the location where arbitration proceedings may take place for convenience. The court emphasized that the seat is paramount in determining the law applicable to arbitration. Interim relief under Section 9. Indian courts cannot grant interim relief under Section 9 if the arbitration is seated outside India. Parties must rely on the law of the seat of arbitration for interim measures. Prospective application of judgment was that the judgment applies only to arbitration agreement executed after 6th September 2012 to avoid disrupting, because this case came in section in the year of 2012. So all the post cases will come under this. After 2012, this condition will be applied. So So the key legal provisions used in this judgment was part one, and that was applies only to domestic arbitration and international arbitration seated in India. Seated in India, if you can understand what I'm trying to say here, the international arbitration who are seated in India will only on those cases part one will be applied. Section 2 clause 7 talks about it differentiate between domestic and foreign awards. Section 9, interim measures by courts inapplicable to foreign seated arbitration. Section 34, challenge to arbitrable award inapplicable to foreign awards. Part 2 deals with foreign awards under the New York Convention and Geneva Convention. Unilateral model law talks about this act follows the seat centric approach, ensuring procedural of the seat governs arbitration. So the implication of this judgment was it actually given the certainty in arbitration law. So before Balco case, there was Bhatia International Law. It was really confusing judgment because uh, the laws who were seated outside India were also sometime they were applying the laws of India. So it cleared under Balco case. So it's a very landmark judgment that has to be remembered by everyone. It given the certainty in arbitration law, the judgment reinforced the seat-centric approach, making it clear that the law of the seat governs arbitration proceeding. No Indian court interference. So Indian courts cannot interfere in foreign seated arbitration, ensuring minimal judicial intervention. Impact on interim relief was that no interim relief available under Section 9 for foreign seated arbitration, potentially leaving parties reliant on foreign seats legal system. Limited ground for challenging foreign awards. So the foreign awards can only be registered under Section 48 when enforcement is sought, not under Section 34. So the quick summary of this judgment was the applicability of Part 1. So we all know only for arbitration seated in India. Seat versus venue. Seat determines procedural law. Venue is physical location. Interim relief section 9 will not be applicable on foreign seated arbitration. Challenging foreign awards not under section 34, only under section 48. Prospective application applies to agreement post 6 September 2012. We'll also go and read the case of Vidya Darolia versus Durga Trading Corporation 2021. So you guys will be thinking before in the first class we have gone through the too many judgments. So we are reading the judgment to get an idea what ADR is, what. I think the judgments and case laws are the best way to understand any law during the time I was preparing for my exams and things, I have realized judgment are really helpful for basic understanding. So I am starting with few landmark judgment cases. So you guys will get an idea what ADR is and how does it work and what are the laws applicable to it and how the use of arbitration is in India. So Vidya Darolia case is a very landmark judgment case. So under this case, it was discussed that the it was they were discussing about arbitrability. So under this case, the Supreme Court decision with Vidya Darulia versus Durga Trading Corporation is a landmark judgment that resolved key question about the arbitrability of disputes involving allegations of fraud. This case is particularly important for clarifying Indian judiciary's approach to disputes that were previously considered non-arbitrable due to allegation of fraud. Let's break down the topic into simple and digestible parts. So, what is arbitrability? Arbitrability determines whether a particular dispute can be resolved through arbitration courts. Consider the nature of the dispute and decide whether arbitration is appropriate. Certain disputes, like those involving rights in rem, rights enforceable against the world, like property disputes, are typically considered non-arbitrable. So, right in rem is r- right against the world, right enforceable against the world. So, those rights cannot be enforceable in arbitration because only two. It's between it's a private disputes, like between two parties. Mostly it takes, so not a criminal case can be executed through arbitration. Okay, so it's basically a right in rem. Fraud and arbitrability before Vidya Darulia case. So before this judgment, the Indian judiciary approach to the arbitrability of fraud evolved over time, marked by inconsistent rulings. So there's one case, N. Radhakrishnan versus Maestro Engineer. The Supreme Court held that disputes involving serious allegation of fraud could not be referred to arbitration. So problem with this ruling was that it did not define what constitutes serious fraud. It ignored Section 8 of Arbitration and Conciliation Act 1996, which mandates courts to refer dispute to arbitration if there is an arbitration agreement. It assumed arbitration lacked the capacity to address disputes involving fraud. There's one more case, Ayasami versus Paramasima, 2016. The court created two categories of fraud: fraud simpliciter, serious fraud. Simple fraud allegation involving internal matters between parties were arbitrable, and serious fraud affecting public domain requiring extensive evidence of criminal aspect was non-arbitrable. Serious fraud included forgery or allegation that invalidated the arbitration agreement itself. So the Supreme Court's decision in Vidya Darulia was the Vidya Darulia judgment clarified and consolidated the principle on arbitrability of fraud. It made several key observations. Public policy and arbitrability. The court addressed earlier judgment that relied on public policy to justify the non-arbitrability of fraud. It explained that public policy and non-arbitrability are distinct grounds. Public policy concerns arise at the stage of setting aside an arbitrable award under Section 34 of the Arbitration Act, not at the referral stage. Presumption in favor of arbitrability. Unless a statute explicitly bars arbitration or dispute inherently requires court adjudication. Example, right in rem. There is a presumption that disputes are arbitrable. Flawed assumption about arbitration. Rejecting the assumption that courts are better equipped to handle fraud allegation, the court emphasized that arbitration is a robust, fair, and impartial process. Arbitration are skilled professionals capable of resolving complex disputes. It also overruled the R. Radhakrishnan judgment. The court expressively overruled and held that disputes involving allegation of frauds are no longer automatically non-arbitrable. This marked a shift towards pro-arbitration approach. So key takeaways from the Vidya Darulia was fraud can be arbitrable. Allegation of fraud do not automatically bar arbitration unless they invalidate the arbitration agreement or involve public interest. It strengthened the arbitration framework. The decision reinforces arbitration as a credible, effective, and alternative to litigation. The courts also must uphold the arbitration process unless expressively prohibited by the law. This case has given the clarity on public policy. Public policy concerns must be addressed during the enforcement or challenge of arbitral award, not at the referral stage. Why Vidya Darolia case mattered? So, because this judgment resolves inconsistency in the earlier approach to the arbitrability of fraud. It also promotes an arbitration friendly regime in India. It ensures that arbitration remains a viable, efficient dispute resolution mechanism even for complex cases involving fraud. So, I will gonna add one more case here, that is Perkins Eastman Architects versus HSCC India Limited 2019. So it talks about issue related to appointment of arbitrators by interested parties. It held that unilateral appointment of arbitration by one party is invalid. So the Supreme Court, relying on precedents, concluded that party with an interest in the outcome of the dispute should not be allowed to. Of course, it's a case dealing with appointment of arbitrators. So the party who cannot appoint an arbitrator on the, like, a sole arbitrator, because it will include some bias. So both the party has to have the say before appointing the arbitrator. The court emphasized the need for neutrality in arbitration and held that the appointment of the arbitrator in this case was invalid. Consequently, the court appointed a retired Justice A.K. Sikri as the arbitrator for this case. The analysis of this case was that the court ruling in Perkins has extended the TRF rationale. So TRF is one other case we'll discuss later on this. So the implication of Perkins rule is as significant for future arbitration, especially in government contracts and agreement with financial institutions where unilateral appointments have been common. The judgment may necessitate the revision of arbitration clauses in such contracts to comply with the new interpretation of impartiality and independence. However, the author believes that uh, guys, we should end the class here, and we'll discuss about advantages in the next class. So for today's class, we'll be starting till here. We have read few cases, understood some basic concept through that. In the next class, we're gonna discuss about the advantages of ADR, disadvantages, and other basic legal framework.